Jocko was telling us what was going on. We were having updates of all the different things that had happened and that were happening and what could happen. Yeah, it was the most sustained combat since Vietnam. Seeing our leadership interact with the other soldiers and Marines to instantly start building relationships, it was incredible. Colonel Clark called us his Army Frogmen. AJV is Jocko. How many guys did you kill on that op? I told him. He's like, roger that. Good afternoon. This is the JP Dinnell podcast, episode 34. I am JP Dinnell, and as always, I have Lucas with me. It was the summer of 2005. I had just come back from Iraq on my first deployment. We were just getting done with our post-deployment leave. I had spent about 3 weeks up in Sacramento. You get about a month of leave. I spent 3 weeks up in Sacramento with family and friends and, just hanging out, going out, having a good time, seeing all my friends, spending a lot of time with my family. The summer time in Sacramento has always been one of my favorite growing up because you have those hot summer nights. I've always enjoyed the heat. I've always enjoyed the old classic car shows that I would get to go to with my family. Mm-hmm. We would go up to Reno and Lake Tahoe for hot August nights. A lot of really good memories. And I remember coming back from leave up in Sacramento, back to San Diego to start our new workup. We had formed up a new task unit. I found out that Leif Babin was coming over from SEAL Team 5 to SEAL Team 3. He was going to be in Charlie Platoon, which was my sister platoon. And I also had heard about this new guy named Jocko that was going to be our task unit commander. I heard that he had a really good reputation. I heard that he was a prior enlisted SEAL that became an officer, had a combat deployment as a junior officer, was a black belt in Jiu-Jitsu, and more importantly, at least at the time for me, more importantly, I heard he was a stud. I heard that he was the type of leader that you wanted to work for, that he was one of the boys. I don't even know what that really means as I think about it now that I'm 41. But when I was 22 years old, hearing that your new task unit commander was a stud, a black belt in jiu-jitsu, prior enlisted guy, and was one of the boys, I was pretty excited. I can't pinpoint the very first time I ever saw Jocko. I just think of many memories of just seeing this almost emotionless, muscular, shaved head, just aggressive, mean-looking guy. I wasn't scared of him. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't intimidated by him in a negative way. I was actually motivated and inspired that this was going to be my new task unit commander. His uniform was always squared away. He was always cleanly shaven, even on the non-traditional Frogman Fridays that guys tried to pull, where they don't shave on Fridays so they can have a little bit of scruff over the weekend. Not Jocko. Jocko was cleanly shaven. Shaved head. So he had a squared away haircut at all times. His uniform was always squared away. Was never sloppy. And I remember the very first actual conversation that I had with Jocko. We were out in the middle of the desert, out in Nyland, Texas, for all of our land warfare training. And the weekend before that trip, I had gotten in a fight downtown San Diego. And I had some staples in my wrist. My wrist got cut up pretty bad. Had some staples and stitches. And you had this training, so I had it all wrapped up pretty tight. And I knew that if I had a brace on, I wasn't going to be able to do the training, so I just had it wrapped up. And I put a bunch of super glue over the staples and stitches so that it wouldn't get infected out in the desert and it wouldn't hinder me from doing my training. And I remember Jocko pulling me aside and asking me what had happened, and I told him. And he just made a very simple comment through a very simple question. He asked me what was going to be my focus. What did I want to focus on? Do I want to be getting in fights in downtown San Diego, or do I want to be training for war to go hunt and kill the enemy? And that was a very defining moment for me, because Jocko was doing what every great leader does. It's reminding their people of what their purpose is and what they should be focusing on. And I was a young, wild team guy. I was that leadership challenge. I was that liberty risk. And it's embarrassing at times when I think back to how I acted. And I'll have these conversations with Jocko and Leif, and when Seth was alive, I'd have these same conversations, and I'd talk to other guys. And it's unique because the three of them I have put through the most stress and leadership challenges, and every single time they all just kind of chuckle and laugh. And even Andrew Paul, who at times I've talked about this, and he'll make the comment of like, yeah, but you were a young team guy, and you were the type of team guy that we needed. And while that was true, I see that now that I'm older, I get embarrassed at times when I think about the stress that I caused Jocko and Seth and Leif in Task Unit Bruiser. You know, one of the initial things that Jocko did for our task unit was he rebranded us. He renamed us. And I know we've talked about that before, and we were Task Unit Bravo and we became Task Unit Bruiser. And Jocko did that because he learned that from one of his mentors, a leader that he looked up to, that he admired, Colonel Hackworth. He learned that from reading the book About Face. And when he came in, he simply informed us, hey guys, we are no longer going to be Task Unit Bravo. We are now Task Unit Bruiser. And it reset the tone for what we needed to be focused on. Similar to that conversation when Jocko asked me, hey, what do you want to be focused on? What's your priorities? You want to be getting in fights downtown San Diego, or do you want to be training for war so you can go overseas and hunt and kill the enemy? Now, we knew things were bad overseas. We had heard rumors, but those rumors became the truth when Jocko started sharing with us the after action reports and reading to us reports of what was happening overseas and explaining to us what this enemy was like and what combat was going to be like, and that it was going to be unlike anything that we had ever seen before. And I was 22 years old. And because Jocko told us the truth, it allowed us to actually take ownership. It allowed us to take control over our destiny. And it gave us the ability to be prepared for the worst place in the world. It allowed us to take ownership over our training, over our gear, over our preparation. And I remember we were out in the middle of the desert for that hard block of training. And that conversation that he had with me was something I thought about every single day of that training. And I remember it was in the middle of the night. We just got done with some IADs, which stands for immediate action drills. It's a form of training that we do in regards to like, how do you react to a threat or an attack? What's your immediate action drill? What are you doing now? If they do this, you do this. If they do this, you do this. Yeah. And it was non-stop training and training and training, so that it became muscle memory, so that these movements and these calls would be secondary to our nature, to where we didn't have to think about it. And to the point where you saw something start to formulate, you already had one or two calls in your brain ready to be made, so that we could actually dictate the situation instead of the situation dictating us. And that was because of our training and because Jocko, Seth, and Leif were preparing us for war. And I remember we got done with the run and we're all reloading our magazine. We just got done with the debrief talking about the run, what was good, what was bad, the mistakes that we had made. And I remember I'm loading up my magazines, and I hear Jocko say, JP, I need to talk to you. JP, come here. And my stomach dropped because I immediately started thinking about what were the mistakes that I had made. What did I do wrong? And as I'm walking over to Jocko, I start creating all these excuses in my brain. Because unfortunately at the time, that was my natural tendency, was to assume that if somebody from my leadership wanted to talk to me, it was because I had made a mistake. And I get to Jocko and I'm standing at attention. I'm looking up at him, and it's not because he towers over me. Jocko and I are both about 5'10" if we stretch. So we are of equal height. And he was towering over me, or he was standing over me, because he was on a little train feature. Just high enough to where he could see all of the guys. He could be watching and listening and just there to provide support and guidance. So he calls me over. I'm standing, and now I'm standing at attention looking up at him. And I am fearful that I had made a big mistake and that I'm going to get chewed out and or be told the mistakes that I made and how I let him down. I'm just making up all these crazy things in my brain. And Jocko chuckles and he says, JP, relax. And when Jocko said, JP, relax, I was able to immediately relax. And as I think back of that situation, Jocko was doing what every great leader should do, is create an environment where your people are comfortable to talk to you. Because had I stood there at attention full of fear, my ability to retain what he was going to tell me would have been very low. I would not have retained much of anything because of the fear and because of me being nervous and all the mistakes that I thought I made and all the excuses I was making up in my brain. But instead, Jocko was able to control that and create a culture that leaders need to create to where I was comfortable talking with my leadership. I was not nervous so that I could listen and receive that feedback and make corrections. And when he said that, I was able to, like I said, relax, take a breath, and listen. And what Jocko did next was incredible. And it's what every great leader should do as well. The next thing he said is, JP, I need your help. I want you to think about this from my perspective. I'm 22 years old. I look up to this guy a great deal. He has a phenomenal reputation. All the things I said about him earlier. He is the ideal Navy SEAL leader in my mind. I knew that he was, when he was an enlisted guy, he was junior sailor of the quarter, and I think junior sailor of the year. When he became an officer, he got selected to be able to go to college. So he went from enlisted to the officer program. The selection process for that is pretty strenuous. They don't take people that are not doing well. They don't take people that are below average. They don't take the low performers. They take the high performers. They're very selective of who they pick to go do this. And then when he was an officer, I also knew that he was the Admiral's aide. Well, guess what? If you're going to be the Admiral's aide, that means that you are probably pretty squared away as an officer. And they're picking the top people to do that job. So I knew all these things about him. And now all of a sudden, this guy is saying, JP, I need your help. How much more in tune to what he was about to say do you think I was? It was as much as I could be. My ability to listen and retain was at the highest it possibly could have been, because he knew that I cared about him. He knew that I cared about the mission. He knew I cared about what we were doing. And when he said, I need your help, I was bought in. The next thing he told me is, hey, when we get back to camp, I need you to put JP in big bold letters on your helmet so that I can easily find you and task you with helping solve problems. I need Seth and Leif and Benny and the rest of your leaders to be able to find you and task you with problems. I need you to be more aggressive with your leadership. If you see problems that need to be fixed, I need you to fix them. If you see things that are starting to formulate, I need you to be proactive and solve those things. What Jocko was doing is he was giving me ownership. He was asking me to step up and lead. And the next thing that he said was extremely empowering, because he knew my natural reservations. While I wanted to help, while I wanted to lead, while I wanted to do all these things that he was asking me to do, that Seth needed me to do, he also knew that I'd have some hesitation and reservations because of fear of making mistakes. So the next thing that he said was critical. He said, you're going to make some mistakes, and that's okay. You're going to make the same mistakes that I made. You're going to make the same mistakes that Seth and Benny and the rest of your leadership has made. But we need to make those mistakes in training so that we can work through them and we can learn. We need to make those mistakes here and not on the battlefield. Because when you get overseas, you are going to be in a position of leadership, and you're going to be in a position of power as a sniper, and you're going to have a lot of responsibility on your plate as a sniper, as a point man, as a machine gunner. And I need to know that you have the ability to make those decisions, the proper decisions. Now, there's a lot more to that conversation that we had, but it was a life-changing conversation because it reminds me, as I look back, Jocko was showing me what my mission was. He was showing me what my why was, what my purpose was in Task Unit Bruiser. And Jocko did that with everybody in our task unit. And because he did that with everybody in our task unit, we were able to perform at a very high level, and we were selected to go to Ramadi. And that wasn't just a one-off thing. That wasn't just because we were trying to outperform everybody else. That was just who Jocko was, because he had been taught to lead. Leadership is a skill set. Jocko had taught himself and or had been taught to do these things from good leaders, whether it was leadership through books or leadership through hands-on training through his platoon chief or an LPO or an officer in charge or another older guy, or just watching somebody else interact with their platoon. Jocko had been taught to do these things, and he was teaching us how to do the same. And so I was 22 years old when that happened. We go through our workup. We have a really good workup. We find out that we're going to be going to Ramadi for deployment, and we're fired up. We know that it's a really bad place because, like I said, we were reading reports. Jocko was telling us what was going on. We were having updates of all the different things that had happened and that were happening and what could happen. And I remember when we got overseas, one of the coolest things is seeing our leadership interact with the other soldiers and Marines to instantly start building relationships. It was incredible. And our leadership explained to us, hey, this is what we need to be doing. Here's why. How do you guys want to get the job done? How do you guys want to help? Immediately, they were pushing ownership back down to us, and we felt empowered. And when we got to Ramadi, we did a few initial pushes and operations and clearances, and we were trying to figure out who's going to do what and where we're going to go. And I was able to go to the eastern side of Ramadi with Seth Stone and Benny and a few other guys and our interpreter Moose. And it was absolutely incredible. And when we were going over there, Jocko and Seth put me in a position of leadership, and they put me in a position where I was going to be our leading petty officer of that small group. And Benny was acting as our platoon chief. And I was the youngest and most junior ranking guy. And just like Jocko had told me out in the middle of the desert, he didn't care that I was the youngest, most junior ranking guy, because that was one of my concerns of stepping up and leading and making. I didn't want to overstep boundaries. I didn't want to step on toes. Yeah. But he was guiding me and showing me the right way to do it and explaining that to me. And Benny helped me out a lot on that workup and deployment. And so did Seth, like the big brother that he was. And when we got to Ramadi, I just remember them empowering me to take on that leadership position, and Jocko giving me guidance of saying, hey, it's just to support these guys and to support Seth. The guys listen to you. You have a good relationship with the guys. Nothing changes. And that was the attitude that I had when I got put in that position. I remember just sitting down with Seth and getting alignment of what we needed to be doing, and sitting down with the guys and saying, hey, this is what we need to be doing. Here's what we're focused on. I'm here to support you guys. And I'm thankful for that good leadership that was shown to me. You know, it's crazy at the time when we were in Task Unit Bruiser, Jocko was 33, 34 years old. I was 22 years old. I turned 23 the month before we deployed to Ramadi when I went home on leave. And just the ability that we were given because of relationships was absolutely incredible. The ability to go out there and work and operate because of the relationships our leadership had built with those soldiers and Marines was absolutely incredible. And, you know, working for Jocko has always been incredible. There's also a burden associated with working for Jocko because, you know, there's a high level of demand. There's a high level of perfection that we're all seeking, not expected, but seeking. And there's a high level of performance that you just have to maintain. You have to maintain integrity. You have to maintain a very strong work ethic. You have to maintain discipline. You have to control your attitude. You have to be building relationships. You have to be thinking strategic, yet acting tactically. There's a lot that comes to working for Jocko. But it's also one of the greatest rewards. Like I said in our previous episode, working with Leif and for Leif, it's been an incredible reward because it's forced me to grow. And I know that my life is in a incredible situation because of the opportunity that Jocko and Leif gave me. Because Seth reached out to Jocko and said JP could use some help. And because Jocko, being the good leader that he is, found a way to help me once again. And 7.5 years later, I am now our director of training at Echelon Front, running all of our experiential leadership training, the councils, the battlefields, the roll calls. Those all fall under me. And obviously, I have other guys that are actually running the training, like Cody Gandy, our director of experiential leadership training, and Jason Gardner and Steve Ward running the council and the battlefields. I mean, dude, those guys do such a phenomenal job at those. And then, Danny and Cody working to expand all of our roll calls, and now Justin doing sales for all of our experiential leadership training and all of our roll calls, just growing and expanding. It's been incredible. And now Josh Strasburger working on our ops team to support FTXs and musters and roll calls. The growth has been incredible. The opportunity is absolutely incredible. And I know that it is a gift, and it's a gift that I need to be earning every single day. And, working for Jocko has legitimately changed my life. So I'm assuming that we'll expand upon that a little bit more today, my bud. How are you?
Ben, I'm fantastic.
Let's go.
Yeah, we got, we're 4 weeks into this new baby, and I'm starting to like him. So, so that's where we're at. He let me sleep last night, which was great, and so I think because of that we're beginning to bond. We're actually in that place now where I'm holding him more.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, because like the first few weeks, man, they're so dependent on mom. But
how many weeks old is he?
I'm great. I think this is 4 now.
Wow,
I think we're 4.
That has gone by really fast.
You ain't got to tell me, dude. Yeah.
Well, I know it's a blur for you and your wife right now.
It's nuts. It's absolutely crazy. But it was, yes, it's been good. And I've loved getting to see the response from our episode last week that we did about Leif.
Yeah.
So many people have, questions, and it's been so cool and encouraging to see all the folks that have seen and watched the video or heard the podcast, and how much they have really enjoyed getting to hear some of those stories. So we're gonna hit on some of the same questions that we did last week as far as like who they are to you and that kind of thing.
Cool.
But I did have some questions just about this story in the beginning that you told. What is a liberty risk? As a non-commissioned civilian, as an NCC. Non-commissioned civilian. As an NCC, I would like to know. That's my new official title. Maybe that is the patch that I'll wear to the muster this year. Since my mustard patch is like off limits, I'll just wear official NCC, non-commissioned civilian. What does it mean to be a liberty risk? Am I a liberty risk?
No, you're a risk of being punched.
Oh, okay, there you go. I am a risk of being within reach. That's the problem. Boom.
Liberty risk.
Yes.
So when it stems from I guess they still do it in the regular fleet Navy. In the SEAL teams, we didn't do it like, hey, you're on liberty. Well, I guess they kind of would, but on the weekend, you have the weekend off. It's called liberty.
Okay.
So if you're on a ship, you pull into a port, you go on liberty. You're going out into town. Well, a liberty risk means you're probably going to get in trouble. You go out, you get in a fight, you get drunk, whatever. You do something that you're not supposed to be doing. Right. You're a liberty risk, meaning when JP would be on liberty, it was a risk of him getting in trouble and or the command being notified.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so you're like liberty risk, aka needs a chaperone. Like that's how from the the ministry perspective.
When you put it that way,
that's what we would do. Be like, no, okay. Well, when we stop to get hamburgers at this rest stop, whenever we're on our way to the youth trip, somebody's gonna have to go with them. I want to start calling them liberty risks now instead of being like, no, they need special attention. Be like, that kid's a liberty risk. Let's do it.
I'm willing to bet the definition of liberty risk when you're on these church trips with kids is going to be slightly different than...
Bro, so I don't know, man. We had some kids that were sneaking booze into church camp, and there have been several in some of the camps that I've spoken at in the last few years that have snuck in drugs.
What?
That had it and we're doing that. Yeah, because a lot of the kids
those
that are
kids
coming,
need to be there.
That's exactly right.
That's where those kids need to be.
And that's the cool thing about those camps is that, that's what we lead with is like, hey, listen, we're going to take this from you, but we're going to have a very frank conversation because you do need to be here. Yeah. And, what's causing this and where's that? And so, yeah, that's been awesome. All right, so liberty risk, check. Got it. Nice. I wasn't sure what an admiral's aide was. So while you were talking about it, this was something I looked up. And so this is from the description of the official Navy website. It says, ever wonder what an admiral does for a living? Want to learn an organization from the top down? Top down's in all caps. Flag aide jobs, which is an admiral aide is called a flag aide. Okay. I learned from the Navy website. Flag aide jobs are a fantastic way to gain experience and insight on how the Navy operates. As an aide, you get to handle many of the Admiral's personal and administrative matters. It's a challenging but highly rewarding duty for junior officers with strong demonstrated performance. And I found a little bit like an excerpt of a blog from a guy who did this. And he was like, in all of my years in the Navy, being the Admiral's aide was the most challenging job that I had. So this is there are a lot of things that you guys talk about, whether it is your medals that you were awarded for your time in service and the duty to your country, whether it
for doing our job.
Correct. And yeah, I'll leave it at that. Yes. So there's some of that. There are some things that you guys talk about in relationship to like promotions that y'all got or jobs that you did that I don't think for the rest of the NCCs out there that we really have a good grasp of like what that means or how difficult some of those things were.
Yeah.
But this sounds like it was a pretty intense thing. It's just essentially, for lack of a better way to put it, like to sort of put it into business terms is like you essentially like, hey, welcome to management. Your job is going to be to intern for our CEO. And that's how you're going to learn the business, by staying with him day in and day out until he's ready to trust you with tasks that you can do for him. And then we're going to kick you out to where you're actually a leader within the organization.
Yeah, I think that's a close analogy.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like
the
from the
Admiral's
description,
aide is even more intense than that.
For sure.
And
because like life and death is not on the line.
I know. That's what I was going to
like,
say. You're talking like, I mean, I wish, oh man, this is one of those times where I wish I was more educated on this with Jocko.
Sure.
Because I really want to do it justice. And
right.
I don't want anybody listening to this going, oh, that sounds like a cool, easy thing. No, being the Admiral's aide is no joke. If you're the Admiral's aide, it's because you are a top performing officer.
You have to be selected by the Admiral.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a joking matter.
Yeah.
Somebody, and that's why I want to make sure there's a clear distinguishment between, now your analogy was very similar.
Right.
But I just want to make sure that we're giving Jocko and anybody that's ever been an Admiral's aide or in a similar position to like a high-ranking staff NCO or something like, assisting a high-ranking individual in the military.
Right.
Like the stress associated with that and the just the job is unreal. And I know It was definitely not something that Jocko had probably ever envisioned. But, you know, what was cool is he knew that it's what was needed. And so
Yeah.
he did it. And Jocko did it like everything else. I mean, he just freaking knocked it out of the park and, you know, took it very serious.
Yeah.
Which, you know, came to our benefit because of the experience that he had doing that job that wasn't ideal. It gave him a lot of insight. I mean, yeah, I guess so. If you're trying to like, from my perspective, and this is my perspective, and I might be way off, but when I look at an admiral and I'm trying to tie that into business, I mean, you're talking someone that's running like a company that does hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, if not billions of dollars of revenue in regards to manning, personnel,
And hundreds
budgets.
of thousands of people under them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty insane. So yeah, he did that. And
So what would be like a company equivalent to something like that? Like we're talking about the CEO of you know, something like Apple or somebody like that. If we're going to run this analogy, like it's got to be a company that has branches all over the world.
yeah,
And like in, you know, every state that maybe there are a few,
Yep.
you know, genius bars or offices, and then all of those people's problems and things that they have to deal with from all that. Yeah, like, and you're that guy's aide where he's like, hey, listen, go put out this fire because the one I got to do over here is much bigger.
yeah. And then, you know, he's briefing the admiral on all these different reports.
That it would be stressful.
And all these meetings that he needs to be a part of, and making sure he's prepared for these meetings. And I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, that's dude, that's a lot of responsibility.
You know, when I was younger and I knew that he did that, I was like, no way. Now that I'm older, I'd like to do that for a year.
Yeah.
It would be miserable, but I think it would be incredible.
Do you think you would gain weight or lose weight being an admiral's aide? Because people process stress differently.
Ooh, depends. I mean, if you're the admiral's aide, you've also got to be representing the SEAL teams.
Right.
I would lose weight.
Yeah.
I would have to. It would be a non-negotiable for me. I'd have to.
Yeah. I think that would be one of those things that would be so, like the standard to keep would be so impossible. But when you do think of, and I think now it's because of his position in the cultural zeitgeist or like the subculture that is in, you know, the working out and the business leaders, the high performers group. When we think of Navy SEALs, because we've seen his face on so much stuff, right? Jocko's face is kind of what comes in. So if that was the guy who was your aide, there has to, I wonder how much of it had to do with like the look. If the admiral was like, no, you know what? My last aide was, he was a great guy, but he just looked a little too soft and he got some pushback. And then he saw Jocko and he was like, this is the dude. Like nobody's going to be like, excuse me, I don't believe the admiral said that. They're just going to look right at him and be like, yes, sir. I'll just, yep, I buy that, and this will be perfectly fine.
Yep, roger that, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much for speaking with us.
Admiral needs
Mr.
this
Admiral's
report.
aide.
Like Jocko coming like, hey, Admiral told me to come pick this up, and they're like, roger that, sir.
Cool. Would you like copies? Would you like a cup of coffee?
Do you want me to deliver it to you?
Yeah, that.
I don't know. I wonder if that comes into play. I bet it did, but
yeah,
I mean,
for sure, like it would have to, just because of his presence, man.
and you know what's unique is, you know, usually you do that as a junior officer. So he was a junior officer, but he was prior enlisted, had time in the military deployments. So he already had a little rack of ribbons on his uniform with the trident and the jump wings.
Yep.
Oh, that's incredible.
I would not want to be the NCC in that office whenever that aide walked in. So that said, like one of the things that I think is incredible about his career path is going from the Admiral's aide. Now he comes and he takes on, I don't know what'll happen between being the Admiral's aide and taking over Task Unit Bruiser, or what eventually becomes
he
Task
went
Unit
from
Bruiser.
that
Just
to
one to
Task
the
Unit
other.
Bruiser.
So going into Ramadi, because we talked about Leif as a combat leader, and my question now is heading that direction, just so we're tracking together, that I want to know more about Jocko as a combat leader. But I'm curious as to, like, from an organizational standpoint within the Navy, right? If Jocko is this Admiral's aide, now he's coming in, he's in command. I think that there are two different ways to kind of look at this, right? And one is that, like, oh, the Admiral is obviously, he was the Admiral's aide, so the Admiral is going to show him favoritism.
I could tell you that's false.
Right. So the second is that if he conducted himself, which I anticipate and expect that he did, with the same level of excellence that he does in everything else, that when Jocko would have done things, or when things that happened that were like maybe outside of the norm, that instead of like getting that favoritism, what he got was the benefit of the doubt because of the way that he worked with the Admiral. Because you guys faced some crazy stuff in Ramadi that was unlike what any SEAL team had done before.
Yeah, it was the most sustained combat since Vietnam.
Yeah.
And Jocko's even talked about that on his podcast with Vietnam guys, and they'll be talking, and he'll share with them about, stories of us coming back from an op. Like, that very first big clearance that we did, I was carrying 1,200 rounds.
Yeah.
I was carrying the Mark 46 machine gun, which is a belt-fed 5.56 machine gun. Box of 200 rounds on the gun, another 2, 4, 600 on my body, so that's 800 total, and then another 400 in my backpack. 1,200 rounds.
Good grief.
In a 4-hour clearance of just going from building to building, clearing out these ways, helping them get this foothold back. And I came home back to base, right, with less than 100 rounds left.
Good grief.
And there was, guys have talked to Jocko about, like, dude, there's times like we never shot our full load out. And we almost did that every single time.
Yeah.
Now, we're not trying to compare ourselves to those legendary frogmen, because what they did in Vietnam is unreal. Yeah. Like, absolutely unreal. But
and
it was just
very different circumstances, right?
Way different circumstances. Yeah. Horrific things that they fought through. Yeah. And I'm thankful for the legacy that those men set and the training that they put out, which trained guys like Jocko who trained us, so we are I want to make sure we're very honorable of those guys.
Because he was like,
I'm just sharing what they have shared with Jocko.
Right. Yeah. He had some of those guys that were like in, or at least around whenever he was still in his first platoon stuff,
yeah, for sure. Oh yeah. There was a few of them that were still at Warcom as civilians that were helping out with training and everything when I was in the teams. And these guys were, one of the guys, Chuck Miller, who worked at the assault cell with us, was incredible. The guy had, like, I want to say 3 or 4 Purple Hearts.
Good grief.
2 or 3 Silver Stars. And what's crazy is, like, these guys had those things mailed to them. Like, they weren't presented to them. There was no ceremonies. Like, anyway, so we're very, very thankful and respectful of that generation. But Ramadi was just different, and we knew that, and he prepared us for that. And what you were just saying in regards to maybe some preference, it's because of the leadership bank account that he had built up with people.
Yep.
You got to think of this from a relationship aspect. This wasn't because of anything other than, like, hey, you build really good relationships with people. They trust you. Guess what? You're going to have the ability to go out and do more. Like when Aiden's like, hey, I want to go over to a friend's house. Guess what we say? Cool. What time do you want to come back, bud? And he comes back when he says, he literally, he's 18 and he's never been in trouble for doing anything stupid out with friends or at school or anything else like that. Like, there's been a few things that were like, hey, bud, like, something to think about. Maybe you shouldn't do that. Yeah. But I'm talking about, like, never been in trouble. Never been in trouble with a teacher. Never been in trouble with the law. Never been in trouble with a friend's, like, parents. Like, nothing. He's a good kid. So when he says he wants to go do something, how much trust do you think we have with him?
A lot.
Literally a lot. He could go out and be like, hey, I'm over at my friend's house. We got caught up playing video games. It's probably going to be another 2 hours. And I'd be like, okay, cool. Do you want to stay the night there so you don't have to drive? Do you want me to come pick you up? Or there was one time he wanted to go hang out with his friends, but he was like, do you mind driving me? I'm like, why? He's like, I'm a little tired. I want to go hang out, but I'm tired. And I don't think it's safe for me to be driving this tired. I'm like, you are a blessing. I remember I was just like, yep, cool. Now, I'm not going to lie. Was I slightly frustrated that I had to go drive him and then pick him up later? Yes. However, when you look at that big picture, I was like, oh, this is awesome. So what Jocko was able to do is because of his performance. Hey, you want to get some leadership capital built up? Go out there and perform. Go get some wins for your leadership.
Yeah.
Go show your leadership respect. Work hard for your leadership. Show your teammates respect. Build relationships. This isn't rocket science. And that's what he did, and we were able to benefit from it.
I think that's one of the things that often gets overlooked whenever, you read Extreme Ownership, or whenever maybe you go to a muster, you listen to the Jocko podcast, because it's hard to envision him as anything other than the guy at the top of the chain of command.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you see things like, okay, he was a flag aide. Well, that guy is very much not at the top of the chain of command, but he has to represent that top dude to guys that are above him all the way up and down the chain of command in a way that accurately represents the Admiral, that doesn't throw that cloud around. And then whenever you get into the field, like the expectations on you have to be elevated. And that you're going to find the same thing that you do in any other position that kind of has that mystique around it, or part of that tradition, that you're going to end up in a place where people are like, hey, you know what? I think this is great. Or, hey, you know what? This guy was an Admiral's aide, so, he's going to, he's been living in the Admiral's quarters and blah, blah, blah. And is it going to be looking for it? Like, you're going to get both of those things. That said, like we've kind of touched on it already. We touched on it a little bit with the episode with Leif of what things were like in Ramadi. What was Jocko like as a combat leader? Because there's two different, it seems like there's two different things that are at war in him whenever he's telling stories about Ramadi. The first is his desire to be in the middle of the fight. Like, because, we talked about last week that, like, Leif is a gunfighter at heart. It seems to me whenever Jocko is telling his stories, or whenever you read Extreme Ownership, Dichotomy of Leadership, even Leadership Strategy and Tactics, like, he wants to be in the middle of the mess.
Yes.
And the thing that's at war with that, it seems like in all of the books, particularly in Dichotomy of Leadership, he talks about this, is the fact that, like, him being there in the middle of all of it does not help the platoon more often than not, because he becomes the easy button.
Yeah, and if he's in the fight, who's leading strategically?
Yeah.
Nobody. Now, there was times that he was in the fight and had to be in the fight.
Did you ever get to fight alongside Jocko?
No.
Okay.
No. Now, were we close to each other doing clearances? Yes, but we were never like, I was never like firing my weapon and moving and looking and seeing him. I never got to do that.
Yeah.
But if we're in a gunfight, I guarantee you, like, Jocko's going to be off his gun as fast as he can. So I probably never would have seen him shooting his weapon anyways.
Right.
Because as a leader, he needs to be leading and looking around and making calls and looking at the battle map and looking at the train features and figuring out exactly where we're at and listening to both of his radios, so he has his internal and external comms. And I mean, he was a great leader. Everything that I said about Leif, take that and apply it to Jocko, and then amplify it a little bit because of experience and position. Jocko was very trusting. He was extremely trusting of the guys. He was very empowering. Hey, what do you think we should do? Hey, what do you think we should do? I remember one time we were out at Camp Corregidor on the eastern side of Ramadi. That's where I was stationed for the most of that deployment, or based out of, with Seth and Benny and the rest of the guys. And Jocko calls over on the radio, and I pick up the phone or the radio handset, and I realize it's Jocko. And he tells me, he's like, AJV is Jocko. I'm like, hey, what's up, boss? And we're just kind of talking back and forth. And he's like, he asked me, he's like, how many guys did you kill on that op? And I told him, he's like, roger that. And it was just like, very like, all right, roger that. And, he was just very encouraging without being emotional.
Yeah.
There was not a like, yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, let's go out there and get it. Let's go. It was never like that. It was like, roger that. What do you need from me?
Yeah.
Hey, pass this on to Seth, or hey, let me talk to Seth. It was always kept it very professional, which set the tone for our working relationship
Right.
and how we need to be acting around each other. And, Jocko was really good at building relationships with the other branches.
That seems like a challenge.
It is. It's a challenge for everybody because every branch has their little rivalries. And that's usually taught to you by bad leaders. Because, anybody that's actually seen true combat, from my experience, hey, it's one team, one fight.
Yeah.
And I would love to talk to another combat vet that doesn't believe that it's one team, one fight when it's us versus the enemy. Now, you might have had some conflict with some other branches, and for that, I'm sorry. You might have had some issues and conflict with other individuals, and for that, I'm sorry. I know I've created that and I've received that, but ultimately, big picture, we're the U.S. fighting force. We're the U.S. military.
Yeah.
First and foremost. And then we're in our different branches. And so to watch Jocko go and build really good relationships with these soldiers and the Marines was awesome, because I looked up to Jocko. And if I'm looking and watching my boss and Leif and Seth, who Seth is my officer in charge, Jocko's my task unit commander, so he's my boss's boss. If I'm watching these two leaders that I look up to, that I respect, and then Benny, who I look up to and respect as well, being intentional with building relationships with soldiers and Marines and finding ways for us to help them, what do you think I want to do when I'm 23 years old?
You want to follow suit, man.
I want to follow suit.
Yeah.
And guess what I did? I tried to follow suit. And I say tried because I know I wasn't perfect at it, but I can tell you that I know that I built really good relationships with the soldiers and Marines in Ramadi. And the reason why I did that is it was the right thing to do. And my leadership, Benny, Seth, and Jocko from the top down, showing us all how to do it, made sure that we had really good relationships in place.
Yeah.
And it was, we were called Army Frogmen from the Colonel. Colonel Clark called us his Army Frogmen. I have an Army Accommodation Medal with Valor. Do you know how many sailors have an Army Accommodation Medal with Valor?
I can't imagine very many.
There's a very small handful.
Yeah.
And it's because of the relationships that we had with them. They gave us that as a deployment award and medal. I went, one of my really good buddies, Dane, was graduating from airborne jump school. Mm-hmm. And I was at his graduation with him and his wife and some of his other family members. And there was I could tell by their uniforms, these were like legit combat soldiers that were there as instructors. And they saw me, I'm in my dress blue uniform with a trident on and a rack of ribbons. And they see the ARCOM from a distance.
Yeah.
It stands out. It's the Army accommodation. Like, they know their own. And they see it, they come over, and immediately, and I knew what these guys are doing. Immediately, they're like, hey, what's this? And what's this? What's this? And I'm like, it's the ARCOM with Valor. They're like, where'd you get that from? And I was like, well, when we were deployed to Ramadi in 2006, and I was working for Colonel Clark, this was given to our task unit, and their attitude immediately changed. And it was actually really cool to be able to build a relationship and talk with these guys.
Yeah.
But the only reason I share that, again, you had mentioned the awards earlier, is because we were doing our job, and truly we were doing our job. But because we had the relationship, they bestowed that upon us.
Also, this thing looks sick.
Oh yeah, it is. If you watched Band of Brothers, correct?
Yes. Big fan.
Yeah, the 1st 506 Infantry Division.
Mm-hmm.
You are familiar with Greg Curry?
Yes.
Okay. That patch was bestowed upon our task unit. I have that patch.
Really?
Yes.
When are we going to have a show and tell episode?
Never.
Never?
Why?
Like even
No.
No. Like for the YouTube exclusive, just like going through some of those things, not in a sense to like hey, look at all the cool stuff that JP has. But
You can do it after my funeral.
okay,
When Amanda finds a box that's somewhere.
it's somewhere.
Yes.
All right. Well, then I need you to. I've got a sermon that's written
For me already?
No,
That's incredible.
I've got a sermon that's written for if something happens to me,
Oh yeah, that's
then
awesome.
like, hey, this is what you need to preach
Yeah.
if something happens to
I
me.
had so we were talking about how Jocko prepared us for
Yeah.
Ramadi. I had my whole funeral planned out.
Okay, so I
Everything.
need
Like music, picture, slideshow, everything.
the whole deal.
Everything.
So I need the same thing, but just for that box when Amanda finds it for whenever that YouTube episode is going to air.
Cool. Sounds good.
All right, sweet. So I'm glad we worked that out. This is literally how our off-air conversations go.
Yeah.
Go.
If you're wondering what it's like
this is
before we press record.
pretty much.
Okay.
Pretty
back
much
to
it.
Jocko.
Yep. So you're in Ramadi with Jocko. You get and you can correct me if I'm wrong on some of the timeline stuff, but you end up with an injury. You go home.
That's at the very end. No, I didn't go home from that injury. I stayed. So
Right.
I
Yeah.
missed,
You stayed after you're injured. Right.
Yep, I stayed. I missed out on the op that Mikey jumped on the grenade.
Right.
When I went home, it was to escort his body home.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So you escort Mikey's body home, and then Task Unit Bruiser's time in Ramadi ends. Right.
Shortly after, yeah.
Right. Yeah. So the next group comes in that they hand everything over to, and then we have this period where Jocko and Leif kind of split and go different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Leif goes to the officer training school. Jocko ends up at the training detachment, which
Yep.
is called
Tradet.
Tradet.
Yep.
And you are in this place that is, and you've described as like mentally just not a great spot.
Yeah.
And you're an instructor at Buds during this time, right?
Yep. So initially come back from Ramadi, and I'm in Task Unit Bruiser. Seth is our Task Unit Commander now. So he
Okay.
took Jocko's position.
Sweet.
And I am fired up.
Okay.
I'm going to be our lead sniper again. And I mean, life is good. I
Right.
mean, we had a solid task unit. And I found out we were going to Solder City. And at the time, Solder City was,
We're
like-
back in the soup,
yeah.
as they say.
It was, worse than Ramadi.
Wow.
And so I was excited for that. Ended up with an injury. Ended up having to have shoulder surgery. And when they did the surgery, I would just randomly drop stuff in my right hand.
Oh man.
And I found out that I had temporary nerve damage.
Mm-hmm.
And it was going to last about a year. Well, obviously that's not good. Can't stay in a platoon. And so I get pulled from that task unit. I go to Buds. I'm a Buds instructor in the INDOC form of training, which is the indoctrination training to get guys ready for Buds. So it's before first phase, before you actually officially start Buds. And I'm there and I'm miserable. I mean, I am absolutely miserable. I am angry. You know, there's a lot that, when we came back from the deployment, there was no like, hey, let's go sit and talk about things. And hey, here's how you're going to feel. And hey, here's how you deal with this stuff. It was legitimately come back. I go home on leave. My dad had surgery, ends up with blood clots, ends up in ICU. Like, just a horrible, like my whole leave was with was being in the ICU with my dad.
That sucks.
Like listening to just a dee, dee, and a few times just sitting there and all of a sudden it's like dee, and I'm like pounding on the window because my dad is flatlined and they're coming in there and I'm just like, that was my post Ramadi leave. So then all of a sudden I go back.
You're not sipping Mai Tais on a beach somewhere.
No, there's zero relaxation. Come back from that and then get pulled, end up at Buds, and I am angry at everything in life. To the point where, like, I wasn't even, I mean, I was a good instructor in regards to getting guys to quit, but I wasn't a good instructor when it comes to, I had an opportunity where, I could still filter out people and get them to quit, but I also could have been coaching and mentoring guys, which I did not do. Jocko realized and heard him and some of my other senior leadership that was at Tradet that I was having some problems over there. Jocko being the good leader, what does he do? Pulls me over to Trade to work for him, knowing that, hey, if I'm over at the training command and cell, I'll probably have a little bit of sense of worth and a little more fulfillment. So he pulls me over to Trade. I go to the assault cell, which is all of our close quarters combat training and all of our urban warfare training. And I'm just going out as an instructor, and I'm enjoying it a lot. Eventually, that fades, the initial being fired up, being super squared away. And I was miserable. Yeah. And I was drinking a lot. And it was slowly starting to affect how I was acting.
Okay.
It was nothing major, but Jocko could tell something was off. And I remember I was walking by his office one day, and he called me in there, and we're sitting down talking, and he just asked me, he's like, hey man, what's going on? I'm like, nothing. He's like, how are you? I'm like, I'm good. He's like, so what's going on? I'm like, nothing. And I'm phrasing the conversation, but the whole time I'm just like, nope, everything's good. We're good. Everything's good. I'm good. I don't want you to know what's going on, type of deal.
Yeah.
And I remember he finally was like, hey, it's Jocko. Like, what's going on, man? And I just broke down, and I was upset, and I was frustrated, and I explained to him why I was frustrated and how I wanted to be in the task unit still. I wanted to be over with the guys overseas. And I was just unhappy not being in the task unit working for Seth. I was just very angry.
Yeah.
And Jocko sits and he just listens and just lets me vent and doesn't interrupt, doesn't, do anything other than just listen. And we get done with that. I get done with my little session, and he says, JP, I would love nothing more than for you to be overseas with your sniper rifle right now. However, that's not your job. That's not your mission anymore. It's not your mission for right now. Your job, your mission is to be the best dang instructor possible, so that we don't have to put our dress blue uniforms on and go to another funeral again. That's your job. Mm. And it was a very direct, impactful conversation that I needed to hear.
Yeah.
One of the things that we talk about at Echelon Front is being indirect as much as you can.
Yeah.
However, there is a time and place to be direct. And this was one of those times and places that Jocko needed to be direct with me. And he knew he had enough leadership capital built up with me to where that directness would actually be a deposit. Because I looked up to him, I respected him, and it reminded me of what I needed to do. So that was a very calculated statement and conversation that we had that actually was a deposit. There was no withdrawal with that directness. There was none. It was a deposit in my book. And he knew that because he knew our relationship and he knew me. And that's what good leaders do, is they know their people. Jocko knew me. He knew what made me tick. He knew my capabilities. He knew my desires. He knew my skill sets. He knew my strengths, and he knew my weaknesses. That's what good leaders do. You should know your people. And if you don't know your people, take the time to get to know your people. And that's what he did. And that conversation shifted the way I thought and shifted the way I conducted myself as I finished out that time being an instructor and up until the day that I got out.
So what were the differences between working for Jocko at Trade versus working for him in Ramadi? Because the situation is vastly different, though essentially like lives are on the line no matter what, right?
Yes.
There is a difference between sending somebody through an assault cell where they are taught how to work together as a unit with then I won't say that the intent is to make them fail, but to create something that's challenging enough to where they have to work through adversity and learn how to succeed.
Yeah, you're creating an environment that's full of stress while being able to learn and grow. That's what we did at Trade.
Yeah.
And so at Trade, it was just a different level of trust. I mean, Ramadi, lives are on the line. We're running combat operations.
Sure.
At Trade, lives are on the lines because we're preparing guys to go run combat operations. So if you don't train guys properly, you don't equip them, you're you're not doing your job. You're
Right.
actually failing your guys by not providing good, hard training. And we knew that we had to provide good, hard training and that we had to be serious. We had to be dialed in. And also there's a very real inherent risk to the type of training that we were conducting. Guys get injured and killed in our training when complacency creeps in.
Yeah.
And so there was also that aspect of like, hey, in order for us to push the needle, it has to be very calculated. We weren't half anything.
Right.
It was all calculated. Everything that we did had intent behind it because we knew that we had to push the needle to prepare guys for what they're going to be up against.
Yeah.
So I would say the level of trust was actually probably greater at TRADET because we actually knew the burden that we carried as instructors.
Okay.
It's different when you're going over there.
Right.
And you're going through the training and he's our task unit commander and he's getting us prepared and we're taking ownership and we're preparing. It's a different mindset when all of a sudden now it's your job to prepare these guys for what you know is going to happen.
Yeah.
And so you've heard me share this before, and this came from good leadership, which, Jocko was running that training command at the time, and he empowered our leaders to go, and we had great leaders that came in. It wasn't like we had a bunch of average leaders and then Jocko all made them great.
Right.
We had great leaders that came to TRADET that made it even better when Jocko was there. So Jocko was there. We had other great leaders come in, but it's all like, they're all, lifting each other at the same time. And I remember just making a comment to one of my master chiefs one time. I think we've talked about this before, where I was mentioning that we should have more shooting training and instruction. Like, why do we not have in-house internal shooting instructors for the SEAL team so that we could have continuous training?
Yeah.
And it was just a comment. I wasn't complaining or anything else like that. It was just a comment. My master chief's like, build it. I was like, what? He's like, tell me what you need. He's like, that's a good idea. We should do that. You should take lead on that. Build it. Let me know what you need. And I'm like, oh. So think about the level of trust that was there.
Yeah, no doubt.
Build out a new training cell internal to TRADET. And so we built out the marksmanship cell, which is pretty cool.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So you serve with him in Ar Ramadi. You get the opportunity to work with him at TRADET. Before we get to your time at Echelon Front, because this is a third kind of facet of working under his leadership and evolution of relationship, we'll say, right? What was going through your mind when you heard that Jocko was retiring?
It was a sad day for the SEAL teams.
Yeah.
I was happy for him because he deserved it and he obviously earned it.
Right.
But man, I was pissed. Not at him. I was mad at the other leadership in the SEAL teams because I felt, and it was just, this would be cool if, Jocko ever wants to come on the podcast to dive into this deeper.
I'll just text him.
You should shoot him a text. Let me know.
I'll shoot him a text.
Let me know the response you get.
Yep.
Okay.
I need his number.
No, I'm waiting.
I need his number first.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
That's kind of awkward. I was like,
I'll send a message to Echo's other twin.
you should tweet him.
And then we'll figure it. Yeah. That won't get lost in the myriad of tweets that he gets tagged in.
No, I'm sure he'll be looking for it. He's actually probably looking for it right now.
He should be.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm willing to bet he is. So send it and let me see what he says.
All right, I'll let you know.
Okay.
Yep.
Anyways, where were we going with that?
His retirement.
I was actually frustrated with other upper leadership in the SEAL teams because I felt that if they would have given Jocko the ability to be a task unit commander again, which he wanted to do, or to go to a SEAL team and still be somewhat in that combat realm, he would have stayed in. But I felt because of politics, because of his rank and his time, that his next command was going to be like a higher up admin ops type of position that he didn't want to go do. Because it's like, hey, if I'm gonna continue staying in and being away from my family, it's going to be for combat. And if you're not going to let me go do combat, then I'm getting out. And so I was legitimately mad
Yeah.
at upper leadership in the military, which is not fair for me to have been mad.
Well,
But again, it goes to my immaturity at the time and my age.
Oh, I also think, like, from the outside looking in, it's very difficult for a civilian to understand that, like, with rank means that, like, within a company or within an organizational structure, if I have a higher rank and I decide that I want to do something that somebody lower than me is doing or whatever, and I like, hey, you know what? If for whatever reason, like I'm an ops manager, but I decide I want to do inventory at the warehouse like once a week or like for a week straight, nobody's gonna fight me on it. They might wonder why I'm there, but nobody's gonna fight me on it.
Yes.
Whereas in the military, it seems like that same kind of thing that you like. We talked about this happening last week with Leif. That all right, nope, you're too high a rank to go do this thing, so we can't let you do it. It's like, doesn't that make more sense that you would want a more senior officer in that position? Like, is it this weird thing of like, well, if he does it, then that means that nobody's going to get promoted? Or is it, no, you're too valuable, you can't do those kinds of things, you're overqualified for this? None of those things seem to make sense in a battle scenario.
Yeah.
Though they do, if you're like, I used to work at Office Depot. All that stuff makes sense at Office Depot. Because, if somebody came in and they were upset because their office chair didn't have a wheel, then, yeah, they don't need to be dealing with the top guy. But if lives are on the line, it would make sense the other way. It's a very odd thing from the outside looking in. So I can understand your frustration with it.
Yeah.
Especially, being a civilian, knowing very little about that structure and the word we used last week, bureaucracy.
Oh, yeah. Welcome to the U.S. Navy.
Yeah, right. Like that's kind of a crazy thing. So now, so you're upset whenever he retires. Did you go to Jocko's retirement?
No, I was out on the East Coast.
Okay, so East Coast with the SEAL teams, like at something
I was out
there?
on the East Coast.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I was not happy I missed that.
Yeah.
I had surgery and then rehab and yeah.
Yeah, that's...
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's okay.
This is also something that people may not know is a lot of these questions we do are not like pre-planned and rehearsed. So there's like some significant salts in the wounds that we're throwing on this stuff.
It's all good.
Yeah. Okay. So Jocko retires. You get out of the SEAL teams. Let's fast forward to you get invited to muster 001.
Yep.
You're on episode 46 of the Jocko podcast, and you work with Leif. He helps you with your speaking. You get your official offer to be part of Echelon Front. What's it like now working for Jocko in a completely different capacity? Like now, nobody's actual lives are on the line. Now it's livelihoods.
Yeah.
Right? Now you are part of building something from the ground up, which has turned into one of the premier leadership organizations for consulting within the United States, really globally, because you guys are expanding a lot over into the UK in particular. What has that been like in this newest evolution of relationship between you and Jocko, but also in seeing his leadership? Is it different now that you guys are working with more civilians than it was whenever you were in combat or whenever you were at trade at?
Yeah, I mean, it's completely different. The leadership is still great. The leadership principles are still in place. Right. And like I've alluded to and talked about before, it's the more you do this, the more you're aware of these principles, the more you see them. And then with that self-awareness comes some mixed emotions at times.
Yeah.
At least for me. And I think it's the same for most of the people that work with us and people that we work with in regards to when you start really analyzing yourself as a leader through the lens of extreme ownership. There's going to be mixed emotions because you're like, oh man, this is awesome. Like these things are great. Team's doing well. And then all of a sudden it can be like, man, I am completely horrible at this. I really suck at this leadership thing. Yeah. And then you have to go back and remind yourself, oh, leadership is a skill set. These are things I need to be working on and improving. And, there is, Jocko is so busy. He's got a lot going on.
Yeah.
And
he owns like every company that we consume. Like if I want food, I can go to Jocko. If I want supplements, I go to Jocko. If I want clothes, I can get some of Jocko's clothes.
Yeah. It's funny when you put it that way.
Yeah, his ecosystem that
It's
he is
incredible.
It's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I literally, from when I wake up in the morning to like get my my hydrate and my protein shake, when I put on my rash guard, like Jocko's face could literally be on something that I consume or wear all day long. Like it's a bizarre thing.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
It's crazy. So, I say all that, and I used to say, "Hey, man, I know you're really busy." When I would talk to him, and I was just saying it out of respect, never anything other. And Jocko finally gave me some feedback one time. He's like, "Hey, it really bothers me when you say that, because I want you to know I'm never too busy for you. Because you need to know that I am never too busy for you. There's nothing that I have going on that's going to be more important than you needing to talk to me, or if you have questions, or if you need help." And Leif has given me that same feedback as well, because I'm like, "Hey, man, I know you're busy. Sorry." And he's like, "Hey, JP, there is legitimately nothing that can be so important that Jocko and I are not going to be able to get back to you."
yeah,
So I've had to reframe the way I think about that. And so with that being said, the support I have at Echelon Front from Jocko and Leif is incredible. If I need them, all I have to do is let them know, or let Jamie know, or somebody else know, and they're going to put it on this calendar.
yeah,
And then if it's on the calendar, cool, guess what? I've got that phone call set up.
yeah. It's getting done.
It's going to happen. There's been times where I was talking with Jocko, and I was like, "Man, I need to come out and record a podcast with you." He's like, "Cool." It wasn't why or what do you want to talk about. And he's like, "Cool, come on out." And like, I think one of the last podcasts was because of that, because I was just needing to spend some time with him. And if we're going to do it, let's record a podcast. Let's work through some other stuff. And, and it was awesome. It wasn't like, "Well, what do you want to talk about? Why are we doing this? Hey, we need to," it was just like, cool.
No factor,
Yeah.
as y'all say.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jocko's a very trusting leader. Very trusting leader. Break that trust, though. That makes me like, I just,
It's not something you would ever contemplate doing.
I don't think anybody contemplates doing it intentionally.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm not saying just with Jocko, I'm saying in general. Who lives their lives going, "I can't wait to break somebody's trust"? Nobody. Now, do we?
No. Yeah, for sure.
We make mistakes. There are people that make mistakes. I've made mistakes. We've all made mistakes. But I just know that I have to be very intentional with how I maintain my relationship with Jocko, because of how much trust he gives me. And when I say I have to be intentional with how I maintain it, I can't abuse his friendship. I know there are a handful of people that are friends with me so that they can have access to Jocko. I know that. I know exactly who they are.
Boy, that's weird.
It's okay. It's
Yeah,
okay.
but it's still weird.
I don't care.
That's weird.
Okay, it's fine to me. I know.
Yeah.
I know what it is. And I don't think any way different. I don't judge them. I just know. And so it's cool. It is what it is. It's not a big deal.
Yeah. Like, do they just want to be like, "Oh, I know a guy that works for him"?
No, they want to have access to him.
Which is not going to happen.
I'm not going to say no, but the likelihood is, I would say, pretty slim.
Low. Yeah, right.
But so I'm very protective of Jocko. I'm very protective of Leif. I'm very protective of Dave. I'm very protective of Jamie. I'm very protective of Echelon Front.
Yeah.
And that's why Cody and I err on the side of over communication with guys on the FTX team in regards to, "Hey, this is what we represent.
Yeah.
This is what you represent. You come out and you work in FTX. You represent Jocko and Leif. You represent these principles." And does that mean that guys are going to be perfect? No. Does that mean that guys are going to never going to make mistakes? No. People are going to make mistakes. However, we err on the side of that reminder so that guys don't make mistakes. And that goes back to like what I was talking about in regards to Leif. Leif isn't afraid to have the hard conversations. Jocko isn't afraid to have the hard conversations. And why is that? It's because they care about me. They care about our guys. Like, I know that. It's if I saw if I saw a loved one, if I saw my son Aiden doing something wrong, what do you think I'm going to do? Do you think I'm going to give him feedback so he can make corrections, or do you think I'm just going to let him go and do something that's going to ruin his life?
Feedback.
Because I love him and I care about him.
Yeah.
That's why I always joke. I'm like, I don't think Jocko's ever said the word love, but I know he loves me.
Right.
I know that. I know that Jocko loves me because he cares about me. He takes care of me. He gives me proper feedback and guidance. I know that Leif Babin loves me because he gives me guidance and feedback. I know that Dave Burke loves me. I know Jamie cares about me and loves me as a teammate. Like, I know these things because they give me feedback and guidance, and they're willing to have the hard conversations. And they're also willing to trust me. That's what good leaders do. The amount of trust that Jocko has given me is at times uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You know, we are having an executive leadership team a few years ago, executive leadership team meeting a few years ago. And Jocko's like, all right, guys, hey, here's the parameters for you guys. And like Dave, Jamie, and I are like, okay, what's up? He goes, win. That's the parameters, is win. Go out there and win. Get the job done. I trust you guys. You guys are more than capable. Just go out there and win. And that takes time, though, to build that up with somebody.
Yeah.
And yeah, so the difference of, you know, combat, trade it, and now Echelon Front, the principles are all the same. It's just the dynamic of how they're applied is different because of the environment. And what's cool is it just shows that these principles that we teach are universal.
Right.
And we've talked about this before. These principles are biblical. I'll be reading the Bible and I'll send a scripture to Jocko and correlate it to one of the things that we're talking about. And he'll add on to it. He'll add some thoughts, or he'll just like respond like in all caps, something that just makes me want to go run through a wall. Like, it's awesome, you know?
JP, go bust down that wall.
Yes. Yeah. Good memory that you have. You know, I sent him a YouTube video that was from one of my pastors, Pastor Tyron, that I've talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And he was talking about, it was at the beginning of the year, talking about fasting. And I sent it to Jocko. And I can't remember exactly what I said, but it was something along the lines of like, I think you'll really enjoy this. And then I follow up like, I don't know. Oh, no. He responds to me in all caps, spiritual discipline. And I forgot that was like one of the big lines in that. I just, you know, I thought he just said spiritual. I thought he was just replying to like the title of the clip that I sent him.
Right. And
I said, I think you'll really enjoy it. And he goes, I just listened to the whole thing. Spiritual discipline. And I looked at so I swiped, you know how you can swipe left and look at the time? I sent it, and the time from when he responded was exactly the same amount of time of that YouTube video. As soon as I sent it, he watched it, listened to the whole thing, and then responded. And I'm like, I can't get my life together. Just like,
that also means he's not listening to things at like 1.5 speed like we do.
I don't. Can you do that for YouTube?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, there's a little wheel in the settings, and it's got playback speed. Bro, it was a game changer for me whenever I found that.
Oh my gosh, my life has been changed.
Yeah, that's a big one. All right, so I got 2 more questions for you. The first one is just one that I think is interesting, and the second one is a little bit more thoughtful. What is something about Jocko what is the one thing about Jocko maybe, or a couple of things about Jocko that you found most surprising, or that you think people would find most surprising? Like when I went to the muster, the thing that I found most surprising about Jocko was how funny he is.
So he is,
like his sense of humor is phenomenal.
It's insane. So a couple years, September 2018. Him and Leif were in town for the roll call.
Okay.
And we took them out to dinner. We went to Chewy's. And my kids were, you know, they're sleepy. They're kind of, you know, whatever, being little turds. But again, they're only like 6 years old at the time.
Yeah.
And he made Aide and Cora and Nola sing their order.
Like sing it to the waitress?
Oh, yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And he was doing, like, singing to them and acting like he was going to sing the order. And every time Nola would look away, he'd grab some fries and eat them real quick. He was just like devouring her French fries.
That's awesome.
And just like just having a fun. I mean, him around kids is incredible.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, you've read his kids' books. They're incredible.
Yeah.
They're books for humans, not for kids.
Yeah,
Everybody should.
I haven't
read them.
done the Way of the Warrior Kid books yet.
Mike and the Dragons.
We've got Mike and the Dragons, so I did that one.
Well, so Levi's not old enough for Way of the Warrior Kid, but I'm telling you, from a pastor. So
my nephew is though, right?
Oh,
so
yeah?
So I've got my nephew just turned 7.
Oh, nice.
And we're trying to figure out like, all right, what do we need to So the Way of the Warrior Kid, I think is the route we're gonna go.
Let's go
for him for some of that stuff, and then the coloring book.
Oh yeah,
was it's also like it tells a story. So Levi's got the coloring book.
Good.
We've got Mikey and the Dragons,
which is a great book.
Yeah, I give a very condensed version of it because there's a lot of words on some of those pages, and he is interested in the pictures that are on those pages for about 15 seconds.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say that, and so this is going to seem very obvious.
Okay.
To most people, I've always known Jocko is strong. Like I've always known he's like strong. I mean, that guy is strong. I didn't realize how strong he was when it came to grappling.
Oh, really? Yeah, because we have a video of you guys rolling that's on the YouTube channel.
He's playing with me.
Okay.
He is playing. And you can see where he got like super like, and I like almost like rolled him. And then he just turns it up and freaking almost breaks my neck with that.
Okay.
Like,
so that
crank.
is one of my favorite comments that like consistently pops up is like, oh, says light roll. Dude almost got his neck broke. Or lucky he's still alive after, whatever.
But again, like people were like hating on that. I'm like, dude, it's 2 team guys rolling, like big deal. Like I didn't care. But so
but you're right. There is a moment where stuff gets
we've done
super sketchy.
So, and you should see some of the other rounds that him and I have rolled where the whole time was like, something's going to break on me.
Yeah.
He doesn't understand how strong he is when it comes to grappling. And he's not a jerk. He doesn't roll like a jerk. People get hurt because they hurt themselves rolling with Jocko. That's the thing. He's never hurt anybody. They literally hurt themselves because they won't tap and they won't do anything.
Get spazzy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. But we were we were practicing these like standing head and arm chokes, working with the police department one time. And he hits it just boom, like super, like just, what's the proper word? Explosive.
Yeah.
I almost went unconscious in less than 3 seconds.
In a training thing where you're showing the exercise to somebody?
Well, he's just practicing getting the standing head and arm on me as if like I was not compliant.
Yeah.
Less than 3 seconds, I almost went out. And I remember like tapping real quick and then me kind of like doing this and he's like holding me up. He's like, bro, you good? I'm like,
no.
That was a cool magic carpet ride. I mean, I was straight up riding that magic carpet, man.
That's awesome, dude.
But it's just like crazy. His strength. I mean, I get it. People look at him, they're like, oh, he's big, he's strong, he lifts a bunch of weights, he's lifting all the time.
Yep.
It's at a different level, man.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things that you don't know it until it's too late.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right on.
Yeah.
All right, so last question.
I love that his weakness also is mint chocolate chip ice cream, because that's mine as well.
That's also Kirsten's.
So if we got done with this and you're like, hey man, you want to go buy Baskin Robbins and get some mint chocolate chip ice cream, I would have it plugged into my GPS.
Bro, I got a half gallon at the house with your name on it.
I can't do it.
You sure?
We'll talk about it later.
All right, I'll just text Jocko and we can all come over to my house and have mint chocolate chip ice cream. Yeah. So last question. We did the same thing with Leif, and so the question I'm just putting Jocko's name in it. If somebody were to come up to you and say, "Hey, who is Jocko Willink to JP?" How would you answer that question?
I mean, it's the same as Leif. He's a big brother. that I know cares about me, that loves me, that wants me to win. I mean, everything that I have in my life is because Jocko Life gave me an opportunity. And I am so indebted to those guys. And I know that I've got to earn the seat, and it's just a good reminder for me daily of the opportunity that he gave me. Jocko and Leif, they gave me the opportunity because I had a good relationship with them, and I know that. They trusted me, I know that. But they did it because Seth reached out to Leif and was like, hey, JP could use some help. And Jocko didn't have to. He didn't have to at the time. He could have been like, all right, well, But Jocko, being who Jocko is, found a way to take care of me. And because I was reaching out and saying, hey, if there's anything I can do to help you, let me know. And I was constantly in a respectful manner. I wasn't like every day blowing them up, but just, hitting them up. And, I remember specifically saying, I know the mentor doesn't seek out the mentee. This is me reaching out to you. If you need help, if there's anything I can do, let me know. And then the door finally opened up. But if they wouldn't have done that, like, I don't know what would have come about. But the cool thing is, Jocko and Leif have both said this multiple times. They gave me an opportunity. They didn't give me anything. They gave me the ability to work for it.
Yeah.
They don't give out stuff. They'll give you an opportunity and let you earn something, but they're not giving free handouts. They don't believe in that. It doesn't work. If you're going to be a part of the team, you've got to earn it and you've got to maintain it. And the biggest thing is just maintaining that humility. And that's I would say probably one of the top things that I have learned from Jocko is being intentional with my work and my discipline and my humility. Because Jocko is a very, very humble man. Leif is a very humble man. Seth was a very humble man. And Jocko's ability to go out there and make it happen, it isn't because of luck. It isn't because of favor. It's because he goes out there and he works. And when he wants something and he decides he's going to do it, he goes and he gets the work done. There is no excuses. That guy will outwork anybody. And it's inspiring. But what's cool is Jocko also wants you to be your own man. He's not wanting anybody to try to be like him or to be like Seth or to be like Leif. Jocko wants you to be the best version of who God created you to be. And that's what good leaders do, is they empower their people to go out there and take ownership. And that's what he's given me. And I'm very thankful for what I have.
Right on, man.
Yeah, man. So, oh, wow. With that, I want to be respectful of our people's times. That doesn't work.
I mean, they can hit pause and do whatever.
Oh, good times. I know we've talked about it a few times. June 11th is coming up in a few weeks by the time you're listening to this. I will be doing a full-day Echelon Front leadership workshop here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area that's open for individual ticket sales. So you can come solo, you can come with a small team, large team. It doesn't matter. It's probably going to sell out. So make sure you get those tickets. If you have questions, you guys can hit us up. It is being certified through TCOL for our law enforcement to be able to get some training hours and certifications, which looking forward to that. Mm-hmm. Shout out to Flower Mound PD for helping host that training and that certification. You can go to jpdinnell.com, click on events. It's for all the Echelon Front events that I do. My primary focus is Echelon Front. Everything I do is circled around the ecosystem that I have because of Echelon Front. Driving things back to Echelon Front, we want to be very clear about that here. You can also click on the show notes, correct?
Yep.
Wherever this podcast is hosted. Also, before I close it out with some final thoughts, I just want to take the time to thank you all for the support you have given us from listening, sharing, subscribing, and commenting. If you are not subscribed, hit that subscribe button. Appreciate all the shares that we get on social media. It's pretty cool. All the comments that we get on social media and YouTube. Any questions that you guys have that you want us to hit up, let us know. We will hit those up on future episodes and our YouTube exclusives. So every week we are aiming to have an additional episode come out that's only on YouTube. So if you're not subscribed to our YouTube channel, go check that out. If you want to follow us on social media, I'm at JP Dinnell. That's 2 N's, 2 L's. Lucas is at Lucas Pinkard, LucasPinkard. Make sure you're also following Echelon Front. It's at Echelon Front, or you can go to our website, echelonfront.com. Would love to see you guys at a future event. We have the individual FTXs coming up in September. That is almost sold out. We have the muster coming up in October here in Dallas-Fort Worth.
Can't wait.
We have the council. The first council sold out. We opened up a second one.
Really?
Yeah. That one's almost sold out as well.
That's too cool.
Absolutely incredible. Would love to be able to come work with you guys or have one of our awesome instructors come work with your company. So hit us up if that is something that you have some questions on. If you want to, you can also check out a ministry I'm a part of called Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu. We're on Instagram. It's at Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu _USA. Part of that ministry with Isaac, Stephen, and Josh. We also have a podcast that comes out every Tuesday, so you can check out the Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu podcast. We're trying to do events at different gyms about every 4 to 6 weeks. We do a free Jiu-Jitsu seminar. Someone shares their testimony, and then we open it up to open mat for a good day of training. I am a partner of a Texas beef company called Little Cattle Co.
Get that beef.
Yeah, dog. You can follow us on Instagram at Little Cattle Co. That's our company name. It's just Little Cattle Co. Our website is littlecattle.co. We are fully restocked. But by the time you listen to this, we might not.
I already got my my ground beef subscription.
Yeah,
you guys sent the
man.
fully restocked thing, and I said, Steven, I'll see you Monday afternoon.
That's awesome. We had 33 orders this weekend.
That's
from ground
impressive,
beef
man, yeah.
and just a la carte. It was incredible. So we have that ground beef subscription.
There's some new stuff that's about to come out too, because there are some alternative uses for beef tallow that are very, very good for let's say your skincare regimen.
Actually, by the time this comes out, I think that will be launched.
Oh, really nice.
It should be.
Yeah. So check it out. New products coming.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. If we send beef to all lower 48, you can sign up for our ground beef subscription, and also if you just want to order a tomahawk or a couple fillets or a couple sirloins
or a brisket.
Yeah, those briskets are ginormous.
Yep.
Did you see the one in the freezer?
I did. I got to see from what looks like it looks like it came off of a bull that Dale Brisby wouldn't want to ride. The brisket's that big.
Is there a bull that Dale Brisby wouldn't want to ride?
I imagine it would be that one. So not anymore, because that one's now in your freezer.
It's dead. You're welcome, Dale.
You're welcome, Dale.
Oh, man. Also partner with my other best friend, Josh Strasburger, for a company called On the Path Printing. We are an apparel printing company on Instagram. You can check us out on The Path Printing. Also partnered up with Leif and Jocko for a company called Bruiser Arms. You can check us out on Instagram. We are at Bruiser Arms, and Leif and I are going to be putting out some content very soon, putting together some courses of instruction. Looking forward to being able to announce that. It's going to be awesome. So
Stoked.
if you're like Lucas and you're like, I want to go shooting with JP,
Is that what I sound like?
No, not at all.
Are you sure?
I'm positive.
That's kind of what my wife sounds like when she does her impression of me also. I'm starting to think y'all are lying to me.
Oh, man. As always, thank you, Origin and Jocko Fuel, for all the support that you have given my family over the years, and any of the little side things that I'm a part of, all stemming from Echelon Front and the relationship that we have with Origin and Jocko Fuel. It's pretty awesome. We have immersion camp coming up. We also have immersion camp for law enforcement only.
Oh.
And Dedeco, who's in charge of all that, who is, Formiga's professor that he got his black belt from.
And Pete,
who Pete
right?
Roberts got his black belt from.
Yeah.
So it came from Dedeco and the other instructors through Amanda Roberts. She called me and she asked me if I would be one of the instructors this year at that camp. So I'll be helping teach the combatives, and then also each day doing a Echelon Front leadership workshop for our law enforcement at that camp. So it's going to be pretty incredible.
I think I would be qualified to teach verbal combatives. Like, I don't think I could do like physical combative, but if you want somebody that will verbally be combative.
I mean, hey, if you actually got back in the gym or trained consistently, that could shift and change. But
If
somebody had a baby.
Wow.
Anyways.
I did run, I want you to know, today, actually.
Yeah?
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I ran like 3 blocks because I had to come up to the church. It's only like 3 blocks from my house. I had to come up to the church to do something, and I had Levi with me, and Kirsten was like, "Hey, you've got like 15 minutes because he's got to have lunch and he's got to go down for a nap." And I realized too late that I was pushing my time, so I ran to the house with the jogging stroller, and I got to tell you, I could not run a mile right now.
I believe that you
could. I almost posted something that said, I believe I can go a mile, but I don't think I can run a mile. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you know what?
If those 3 blocks are any indicator of how poor my cardio is, then...
But when that happens, does that also kind of inspire you, motivate you to be like, hey, I should probably maybe start working on this a little bit?
Once my lungs stop burning and the room stops spinning. Yeah.
Because think of this from a standpoint like, hey, if there was an emergency and you had to run or you had to carry your kids and run, would you be capable?
Oh, for sure. Yep.
We all say that to ourselves.
My depleted adrenaline gland because of the amount of caffeine that I take will certainly kick in and make that happen.
And I mean, desire and capabilities, they're always the same.
Jocko Fuel just like stays on your spine until you really need it. You crack your back and then you're able to just go.
Okay. Well, if you want to get some of that Jocko Fuel, you can go to jockofuel.com. If you want to check out Immersion Camp or any of the American-made Jiu-Jitsu gear and American-made jeans and pants and shirts and hoodies and belts and boots.
Yep.
Go to
OriginUSA.com. Boots are on sale right now.
Are they?
30% off of the boots right now. I know I've sent that link to like a bunch of people that I think really need.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how irritated would my wife be if I ordered a 4th pair of boots?
I don't think she'd be irritated at all. She would look at you and be like, "Man, that's a handsome pair of boots you got, JP. You look super hot."
Okay.
What's the new boot that they just came out with? Like the hybrid.
Oh, the new boot goofing?
Yeah. Yeah, there is a new one. There's a hybrid that they came out with that's got like it's not like leather all the way up. It's a little breathable and stuff. It looks really cool.
Yeah.
Yep.
Did you catch my line from Reno?
Oh, I caught your line from
just
Reno.
Just new boot goofing. All right. So again, sorry, we might just edit all this out.
We won't.
Go to OriginUSA.com. Go to JockoFuel.com. Check out their supplements. Check out all their gear. As we close it out, I just want to remind you to go out and put in the work. Because when I think back to what we talked about in regards to Jocko and last week, Leif, and what we were able to do in Task Unit Bruiser, we were able to do it because our leadership instilled belief into us. Our leadership told us the truth. Our leadership gave us ownership, and they empowered us to go do the work. So I hope this episode has been a reminder to go out there, go do the work that's needed, and to never settle. This has been the JP Dinnell Podcast, episode 34.